All right, buckle up, everyone, because today we're diving into some pretty interesting stuff. We're doing a deep dive into Grain Brain Exposed by Dr. David Perlmutter, and it might just make you rethink, your next trip to the grocery store.
Well, it definitely made me think twice about my pantry. Perlmutter's main idea is that those everyday carbs we all eat, especially the processed kind, well, he thinks they're causing some serious damage to our brains. He actually calls Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes, saying there's a big connection between how our bodies deal with sugar and how our brains work.
Yeah, that definitely caught my eye, too. Like, can a piece of toast really affect our memory? It's a little unsettling, to be honest. Perlmutter doesn't hold back, saying that modern carbs are practically dissolving our brains.
Yeah, it's a pretty strong visual, and he explains that it's because gluten can cause inflammation, and not just in your gut, but throughout your whole body. And that inflammation can actually disrupt the blood-brain barrier, which is like your brain's security system, keeping harmful stuff out. So if that barrier is weakened, it can cause real problems.
Okay, that makes me a little nervous considering how much bread I usually eat. But sugar is in everything. How does that fit into all of this?
Well, Perlmutter's point is that when you eat sugar, it triggers this surge of insulin, right? And if those insulin levels are constantly high, it's like your brain cells just stop listening to the signals, making it hard for them to use glucose for energy. And the result, well, you get that
Hmm.
foggy feeling, that brain fog, and maybe even, bigger issues down the road like dementia.
Oh, I'm getting a little foggy just thinking about it. I remember that MRI scan in the book, the one comparing a shrunken hippocampus to a healthy one. That was
Yeah.
kind of scary.
Yeah, it makes you think. The hippocampus is essential for memory and learning, and to see how it can potentially shrink because of our diet, well, it definitely drives home the point that what we eat really matters. Maybe we should both put down those donuts, huh?
Donuts are officially off the menu.
Oh.
So if carbs are the villains here, what should we be feeding our brains?
That's where the good fats come in. Our brains are about 60% fat, so we need to give them the right kind of fuel to work properly. Things like avocados, nuts, olive oil, fatty fish, those are all brain-boosting foods.
Okay, so it's not all doom and gloom. We just need to make smarter choices. I've heard people talk about this second brain idea, that our gut and our brain are connected. Is there any truth to that?
It might sound a little strange, but there's actually a really strong connection between your gut and your brain. They're constantly communicating back and forth through this complex network, including something called the vagus nerve. So what's happening in your gut can really affect what's going on in your brain.
So it's not just about digestion then. There's more to it.
There's a lot more to it. Perlmutter talks about this idea of a leaky gut, which can happen when you're sensitive to gluten.
Hmm.
Basically, the gluten can damage the lining of your intestines, and then toxins can escape into your bloodstream and potentially, even reach your nervous system, including your brain.
And that's where things start to go wrong.
Exactly. A leaky gut can cause widespread inflammation, and that includes inflammation in your brain. And like we discussed, that can really mess with your brain function.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all of this connects. Now, there was something in the book about serotonin being produced in the gut. What's that all about?
Yeah, that's one of the fascinating parts of this gut-brain connection. It turns out that about 90% of your serotonin, which is essential for your mood, is actually made in your gut, not in your brain.
Seriously. So a happy gut equals a happy brain. I like the sound of that.
It's not quite that simple, but there's definitely a connection there. The bacteria in your gut actually play a big role in making serotonin. So keeping your gut microbiome healthy, that's really important for your overall well-being.
Wow, this is blowing my mind. I'm thinking about that case study in the book about John, the teacher who cured his chronic migraines just by cutting out gluten and sugar. And his MRI showed the inflammation in his brain was completely gone.
Yeah, it's a pretty powerful example of how what you eat can have a direct impact on your brain health. John's story shows us that sometimes it's about addressing the root cause of a problem, not just masking the symptoms.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So we've talked about how carbs can be problematic and how gut health is so important. But what can we actually do about it? Does Perlmutter give any practical advice for actually improving our brain health?
He does, he totally does. He outlines a four-step plan to essentially rewire your brain and optimize how it functions. Think of it as a toolkit for taking charge of your brain power.
All right, let's open up that toolbox. What's the first step?
The first step is kill the carbs. Now, it's not about cutting out carbs entirely, but it's about significantly reducing them, aiming for under 60 grams per day. It's kind of like a keto approach where your body shifts from using glucose as fuel to using ketones.
So basically saying sayonara to that bread basket and those sugary drinks.
Yep, Exactly. It's about prioritizing whole, unprocessed foods and focusing on healthy fats and proteins. This helps keep your blood sugar and insulin levels stable, which, as we talked about, is super important for brain health.
Less bread, more brain power. I like it. What's the next step in this brain-boosting plan?
Step 2 is fat is your friend. Perlmutter wants you to embrace those healthy fats we were talking about, avocados, nuts, olive oil, even grass-fed butter. Your brain loves that stuff.
Well, this part of the plan sounds pretty delicious, but isn't all that fat bad for your heart?
That's a common myth that Perlmutter tackles head on. He explains that cholesterol is actually essential for your brain to function properly. It helps build brain cells and it plays a role in making hormones. The problem isn't cholesterol itself, it's the type of fat you're eating. Healthy fats are crucial for those all-important brain processes.
So we could ditch the low-fat craze and bring on the good fats. All right, give me step 3.
Step 3 is fast like a monk. This is about incorporating intermittent fasting into your routine. It doesn't mean going days without eating, but it's about strategically timing your meals to have longer periods where you're not eating.
I've heard about intermittent fasting, but how does that benefit the brain?
Well, fasting actually triggers this process called autophagy, which is it's like spring cleaning for your cells. It helps your body get rid of damaged cells and proteins, and that essentially allows your brain to renew itself and stay healthy.
So it's like hitting the reset button on our brains. Yeah. Interesting. Okay, what's the final step?
The final step is move or lose it. Perlmutter really emphasizes how important regular exercise is for your brain.
I know exercise is good for our bodies, but how does it specifically benefit the brain?
Exercise actually stimulates the growth of new brain cells, a process called neurogenesis. It also increases blood flow to your brain, bringing those essential nutrients and oxygen. And of course, it helps reduce stress, which we all know can really affect how well our brains work.
So exercise really is a win-win for both body and brain. I love that little tip in the book about swapping pasta for zucchini noodles as a way to boost your brain health. It's like a sneaky way to get those benefits without feeling like you're missing out.
Yeah, it's a great example of how small changes in your diet can make a big difference. It's not about deprivation, it's about finding healthy swaps that you enjoy and can stick with.
You know, all this talk about brain boosting is making me feel pretty good. But I'm also curious about some of the common misconceptions out there about nutrition. For example, what about whole grains? Aren't those supposed to be healthy?
That's a great question, and one that Perlmutter addresses directly. He argues that even whole grains can cause those spikes in blood sugar that we were talking about, which could lead to the same problems as refined carbs.
Really? So even my whole wheat toast is out?
Perlmutter suggests minimizing all grains, whether they're whole or refined. It's a controversial stance, but one that he backs up with scientific research.
Okay, I guess I need to rethink my entire pantry. What about cholesterol? We've been told for years to avoid it.
As we mentioned, Perlmutter challenges that idea. He says that cholesterol is actually vital for your brain. It's a key part of your brain cell membranes and plays a role in hormone production.
So the key is to be mindful of the type of cholesterol we're consuming.
Exactly. It's about choosing healthy fats over unhealthy ones and understanding that cholesterol isn't inherently bad for you.
This is all incredibly insightful. I have one more question that I think a lot of listeners might be wondering about. Can this approach, this focus on cutting back on carbs and upping our healthy fat intake, actually help with conditions like ADHD and depression?
It's a really good question and one that, I think a lot of people are curious about.
Yeah, it's something I've been thinking about too.
And the answer, based on what Perlmutter's found and other research out there, the answer seems to be yes. There's more and more evidence showing that low-carb diets can really help reduce those symptoms of ADHD and depression.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. It really shows you how much power our diet has over our mental health. So it's not just about, preventing problems when we're older, but it could actually help us feel better right now.
That's exactly it. By taking care of those underlying things that contribute to these conditions, like inflammation and keeping our blood sugar balanced, we can help create a better environment for our brains to, thrive.
I see. It's like Perlmutter's giving us this map to a healthier brain, and it all starts with what we eat and the choices we make each day.
It is empowering, isn't it? It's like realizing that we have more control over our brain health than we think. It's not all about our genes or how old we are. It's about making choices that help our brains work better every single day.
It really is a hopeful message, and I love that analogy Perlmutter uses, where he says our brain is either like a garden or a wasteland. He says it's up to us to take care of that garden and create the right conditions for our brains to grow.
It's such a good image, and it really gets the point across. Just like a garden needs good soil and sunlight and water to grow, our brains need the right foods and stimulation and good habits to function at their best.
This deep dive has definitely given us a lot to think about. I'm already looking at my pantry a little differently now.
It's all about awareness, isn't it? Once you understand the connection between like what you're eating and how you're thinking, it can really change how you see things.
Absolutely. So, what was your biggest takeaway from Green Brain Exposed? What really stuck with you after reading it?
For me, it was realizing how adaptable our brains really are and how strong they are. We can actually change them, reshape them through the choices we make. I mean, we can create a healthier future for ourselves, and that's pretty remarkable.
It is. It is. It's a message we all need to hear. It's easy to feel like we don't have control over our health, especially when we're talking about our brains. But this book and even our conversation today, it really shows how much power we have to make a difference.
It really does. It's about taking charge of our health and being proactive, when it comes to looking after our brains.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And as we're wrapping up, I have one last question for everyone listening. Have you ever thought about how what you eat might be affecting how you think? It's something to consider, the next time you're at the grocery store deciding what to put in your cart. Until next time, keep those brains sharp and stay curious.
It is food for thought, isn't it?
It really is. And I think what's so cool about Perlmutter's approach is that it's not just about like restrictions and saying no to all the good stuff. He actually gives you a plan for what you should be eating to help your brain.
You're right. You're right. He shifts the focus from, what you can't have to what you should be eating, which is a much better way to think about it, and it's a lot easier to stick with.
Exactly. And it's not just about food either. He talks about how important things like exercise and managing stress are, which are important for our overall well-being too. It's like a whole body approach to keeping our brains healthy.
It really is. It reminds us that taking care of our brains isn't just about preventing problems later on. It's about feeling good right now. It's about having more energy, being able to focus better, and just feeling happier overall.
After talking about all of this, I'm feeling pretty inspired to start taking better care of my own brain.
Me too, me too. It's like we've got this new way of looking at our health, and it's exciting to see all the possibilities.
I love that. Well, we've covered some pretty complicated stuff today, but hopefully everyone listening has a better understanding of how powerful their choices can be when it comes to their brain health.
Remember, your brain is an amazing organ. It can change and adapt. By making good choices about what you eat, how you move, and how you deal with stress, you can create the perfect environment for your brain to thrive.
So go for it. Embrace those good fats, get moving, and give your brain the fuel it needs. Until next time, stay curious and keep those minds sharp.
It really makes you think about what you're putting in your body, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. And I think one of the coolest things about Perlmutter's approach is that, well, it's not just about restricting yourself and saying no to every food you love. He's actually giving us a plan for what we should be eating to support our brain health.
That's a great point. Instead of focusing on what you're missing out on, it's about adding in all those good things that nourish your brain.
Right, exactly. And it goes beyond food, too. He talks about exercise and managing stress, which are so important for, well, just feeling good in general. It's like a whole body approach to brain health, I guess you could say.
It really is. And it makes you realize that taking care of your brain, it's not just about avoiding problems when you get older. It's about feeling your best right now, having more energy, being able to focus better, and just having a more positive mood.
I have to say, after diving into all of this, I'm feeling pretty motivated to start taking better care of my own brain.
Yeah, me too. It's like we've been given a new perspective on our health, and it's exciting to see what we can do with it.
I love that. Well, I know we've gone through some complex stuff today, but I hope everyone listening has come away with a better understanding of just how much power they have when it comes to their brain health.
And remember, your brain is an amazing organ. It can change and adapt in incredible ways. By making good choices about what you eat, how you move your body, and how you deal with stress, you can create an environment where your brain can truly thrive.
So true. So to everyone listening, go out there, embrace those healthy fats, get moving, and give your brain the fuel it needs. Until next time, stay curious and keep those minds sharp.